Good morning, everyone. Why don't we get started? It's 8:30. Welcome to the November joint meeting of the Metro North and Long Island committees. I have at the moment 3 public speakers, starting with Randy Glucksman.
Good morning. I'm Randy Glucksman, Chairman of the Metro North Railroad Commuter Council. Rockland County Executive Ed Day and I remain unhappy about the response that because there were no complaints to Metro North, no action was taken to provide a suitable alternative for the cancellation of train 1601. But I wonder if anybody checked with NJ Transit. The 2015 to 2019 capital program has very little for the Pascack Valley line. Just station improvements at the Spring Valley station, which are scheduled for 2017 and 2018. However, I am glad to see that there are a number of projects for the Port Jervis line. So here is how you can do something to help Pascack Valley line riders. In order to encourage off-peak ridership and the ability to operate a schedule that can provide hourly service in both directions during off-peak hours, this line desperately needs funding, and Metro North construct a cooperation for the construction of 2 passing sidings that would permit this level of service. While I do not have the cost figures for Metro North's share of the project, I'm not talking about a lot of money. In fact, funds for this project were allocated years ago. However, when only 4 of the 6 proposed sidings were constructed, Metro North was refunded their share. This project would, of course, require cooperation of New Jersey Transit, and so my rail advocate colleagues in New Jersey and I have spoken with NJ Transit Management about this project, and I reiterate that Metro North staff must begin to have an active involvement with their counterparts. I am not asking for the same service levels as east of Hudson lines, but there are far too many 2+ hourly service gaps, especially in the midday, that make riding the train not a viable option for discretionary riders. As an example, there is no inbound service from Nanuet between 8:56 a.m. and 10:54 a.m. and between 3:51 p.m. and 9:17. In the morning, the first train arrives in Rockland County at 10:02 a.m. There are no such examples on this side of the Hudson. No doubt you have heard Amtrak's not good news about the condition of the North River tunnels built in 1910 that connect New Jersey and New York. Some of you may wonder why this should be an issue here. Well, the answer is that many of your west of Hudson customers ride trains to Secaucus Junction and transfer to other trains to Penn Station. And if one of these tunnels is shut down for as much needed repairs, the number of trains operated gets reduced from 24 trains per hour to just 6. So if this topic comes up in any of your future discussions, please take an interest in it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Orrin Getz.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, members of the board. My name is Orrin Getz. Unfortunately, as you know, Rockland County riders have gotten increased fares and unfortunately a reduction in late night service. Now the only improvements we see in the 5-year capital plan are some drainage improvements at the Spring Valley station and some platform repairs. Rockland County needs a lot more than that. One of the key issues is we need the Suffern station to become handicapped accessible. I've spoken to New Jersey Transit's executive director, and she would like to partner with the MTA to make that critical station handicapped accessible. We also have to actually upgrade the Spring Valley station itself to make it a true transportation center. In addition to handling local buses and the Pascack Valley Line train service, this station is destined to become a key point in the Hudson Links program, which is a new bus rapid transit system that's scheduled to be implemented across the Tappan Zee Bridge. So we need Spring Valley to become a true transportation center. It's owned by Metro North, and that is a priority item. In addition, the town of Clarkstown has been working on a project for the relocation of the Nanuet train station as part of a transit-oriented development project. Now, Commissioner Wartendijk has been on that task force with me to work on that project, and we have to see that funding is put in for that project so that when it is approved, we can go ahead. As I said last month about the Gateway project, now we know that the federal government has agreed to fund 50% of the Gateway project, which includes the new rail tunnels under the Hudson River and an expansion of Penn Station, New York. As I explained last month, New Jersey Transit has already agreed to be the lead agency on the construction of the new tunnels. We need, however, is like Randy said, the MTA to become an active partner on this project. It's very, very important. And please remember that the ARC project failed initially because the MTA pulled out of that project. This time we need the MTA to be an active partner. And something very important, Vice President Biden recently came to New York and said LaGuardia Airport its terminals look like third world facilities. Well, if you compare LaGuardia Airport's present terminal condition to Penn Station's condition now, LaGuardia Airport's terminals look like the Taj Mahal in comparison to what we have at Penn Station. And I know that Chairman Powley is keenly aware of this. So we really need his help and everybody's help to push ahead the Gateway project so that we can make Penn Station a true fine station that represents New York when visitors come and local people come to visit our great city. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Our last speaker is Murray Bowden.
Morning. About 10 minutes ago, I got an email saying that this meeting is going to be broadcast live. An example of how things at the MTA are moving forward. I've been standing here for a number of years saying things have to change, things have to change. Well, things have changed. We're going forward, you're going forward in a way that kind of surprises me. But this is not the same MTA, Metro North, Long Island Railroad that it was 6 months ago. The changes are outstanding. Sure, there's a lot of stuff that has to be straightened out. But the discussions have started. People are paying attention, not just here, throughout New York State, throughout the Northeast. Things are happening in a rapid way that never happened before. There's a realization that transportation is the linchpin of this economy. And there are people out there planning and doing things to make transportation more accessible, easier, more logical, and quicker. They found ways to do it. I've had some discussions. I expect to have more discussions with Joe and Pat over time. There are issues that I have that I hope to get resolved. But the process of resolving the issues I've been concerned with has started quite successfully. I've stood up here many times and say, why don't we? Well, I'm out here to say they have started. They are moving forward. Yes, everything is not going to be addressed instantaneously, but they're moving forward in a way I've never seen before, and it's in the best interest of our region. So to all those people who've been helpful, thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other public speakers? If not, okay. Approval of the minutes. The Long Island Railroad minutes are on page 5. The Metro North minutes are on page 12. Do I have a motion to approve? Second? All in favor? I understand now there is a change to the work plan, Pat?
Yes, this month's work plan does show a presentation on PTC. There will not be a presentation. We did just give you one back in September, and given the extension that was just given by the government, we did not schedule that. It was on there for 4 times this year, and with taking August off, we wound up with 2 months being almost back-to-back, so we decided not to present that, so that's why it's not on the agenda. It will be on the agenda going forward. One thing I should mention, in looking at this item, one of the things we discovered is that the work plans in the books for the Long Island Railroad and Metro-North are actually depicted differently in the different books. And Joe and I will work together to resolve that. But the difference is we show 2015, and as every month goes by, there's less months shown in the work plan. So if you look at the Long Island Railroad work plan, there's November and December shown, and that's it. In December, we will present to you a revised work plan for 2016. But Metro-North has traditionally used a rolling calendar and has projected 10 months into next year, so it's always showing a 12-month calendar. So that's the difference in why they exist. Don't ask me how long. We just discovered they were different in the last few days. So.
Okay. Very good. Any changes on that? Then we'll go to agency president's report. Pat, you're first.
Yeah, just a light agenda this month. A couple things I do want to mention. One, we did have this past weekend a significant cutover of the next signal hut at Harold Interlocking. This is all part of the East Side Access Project, and we're moving forward with the East Side Access Project. If you remember, we also did one about a year ago for that project, and that was the first. This was the second that we've done there. There's actually 6 of them planned to be done at Harold, so it's an extended process. But the challenge in these cutovers is we actually take out a significant portion of the interlocking out of service and basically only can operate, and it's not just us, it's also Amtrak and Long Island Railroad, or I'm sorry, and New Jersey Transit operations that are affected, where we only have 2 tunnel tubes that we're able to use throughout the weekend because the capacity of Harold is so reduced. So it's real important that when Monday morning rolls around, that everything does come back and come back successfully. And I'm happy to report that did happen this weekend, that the cutover was a success and everything was up and running in time for rush hour service this morning. So it was a successful project, and hats off to the Long Island Railroad signal folks, transportation folks, and also to the East Side Access folks. Who all participated in making sure this was a success. So, okay. One good news story. Second thing I'll mention, and this is actually a work plan item, there is a presentation for the M9 rail cars, and this affects both Metro-North and Long Island Railroad. The presentation is scheduled for CPOC, and it will be given at CPOC. It is in our books here, but we do not plan to give the presentation here. If time permits at the end or something, we could do that, but we do not plan to give that. But the full presentation is in the books, and it is scheduled for CPOC this afternoon.
Okay.
And then the final thing I want to mention is October. Ridership on Long Island Railroad continues to be a good news story. We're up about 2.5% compared to October a year ago. So we continue to move along with real good numbers this year. The October this year and October of last year were different in the number of work days per month. So there is an adjustment that's made to calculate that. And in November, there'll be another adjustment because there's a different number of work days in November as well. But that's the only thing that's a little confusing when you look at the numbers. And that's about all I have.
Okay. Is there a safety enhanced report? Laura?
Good morning. We're reporting on our safety performance through the month of September. The statistics can be found in your book starting on page 184. Through the month of September, our employee injuries are down 12%. The number of lost time injuries are down almost 13%. The FRA reportable injuries are down almost 13%, and lost time injuries are down a little over 8%. In addition, our customer injuries are down close to 20%, and for both employees and customers, slip, trips, and falls continues to be the greatest cause of injury. Our community education and outreach partnership with the police reached over 68,000 folks in the communities. Our enhanced safety action update can be found on page 189. In addition to the traditional speed compliance and confidential close call reporting and safety stand down information, I'd like to point out, and you have this at your seat today, we are launching our first joint customer safety campaign with Amtrak, New Jersey Transit, and MTA tomorrow at Penn Station. In time for the holidays, we recognize that Penn Station, being the busiest terminal in our system and perhaps in the country, poses some challenges for some folks as they navigate through. So to enhance their safety and their customer experience, we have created this Z-Card, which each of you have at your seat now. And it's really designed to be a tool for our customers to be able to navigate, no matter which system that you're using in Penn Station, whether you're using New Jersey Transit, Amtrak, or an MTA system, to really help guide you to plan your travel both before you get there as well as while you're there, should plans change. We have also, extending on the MTA successful Courtesy Counts campaign, each of us have adopted the famous bubble people. There'll be posters and animations, but you'll see at the bottom of the Z-Card map that there's also safety messages to help customers, again, to work together, because the theme is let's travel together safely, to get through Penn Station, and making sure that we're all practicing safe behaviors as we work together to get to where we need to go. So we're actually going to be in Penn Station tomorrow. All the properties will have tables there from 7:30 in the morning till 7:30 in the evening, engaging with our customers about traveling through Penn Station, handing out this valuable information tool, and really launching our joint campaign. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them now.
Any questions for Laura? Ira?
On the close call reporting system, as Metro North has a column where they inform us how many reports were made and kind of the results, a few sentences. We don't do that for Long Island Railroad. Why is that?
We can easily add that to our report.
It'd be good to
It's
see
not done.
because I'm interested in the close call reporting. So
Yeah,
it'd be good to see how many
absolutely.
incidents, and if there could be some data on what improvements have been made as a result of the close call reports, that would be good to see too. Because that's the best way to see if we're missing something, because our employees are there every day, they're out there, and the idea that's is that, well, as you know, is to tell us really if there's something we're missing, some kind of, or even problems that should be addressed.
No, great. It's one of many valuable programs that we have to engage with the employees, so we certainly can provide more information on a regular basis for you.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else? If not, Laura, thank you very much. Laurie, sorry. Metro North, Joe?
Thank you. If Charles Mullins is here, can you work your way up to the front, please? Is he here? Is he here? Okay, good. This morning I want to start by recognizing one of our own, the Croton Harmon sheet metal worker, Charles Mullins, who assisted the crew of the Haverstraw-Ossining ferry in rescuing a boater who capsized in the Hudson on October 27th. Charles, who has been working at Metro North for 2 years, could be considered a reverse peak traveler. Going home, he takes the train from Croton southbound to Ossining and hops on the ferry homeward bound. That evening, Mullins and other passengers were on board waiting for the short ride to Haverstraw when Captain Mike Baker pulled the ferry out of Ossining and headed over on a distress call to a spot about a half a mile where they sighted a man sitting on a capsized boat with a life jacket and wetsuit on. As they pulled up as close as possible, Mullins raced to help First Mate Tom Linane lower a ladder and be ready to get the man on board. And with assistance from Charles, the man was pulled up and helped on board. The boater was quickly transported to Ossining, where EMS personnel were waiting to evaluate him, later taking him to an area hospital. When asked about his role in the rescue, Mullins recently stated, "That's the way I was brought up, to help someone who is in need. I firmly believe in pay it forward, and I would hope that if my wife or child needed help, someone would come to their assistance. It's the right thing to do," and we couldn't agree more. And Jim, if you would do the honors of presenting him with his plaque.
On behalf of the entire committee, congratulations and thank you very much for your service.
For the month of October, Metro North's trains operated reliably at 94.1%, and the AM peak continues to operate reliably at 93.1%, with the off-peak at 93.4%, and the weekend reliability at 97.1%. West of Hudson service operated at 95.2%. You'll also see the results of the 2015 Customer Satisfaction Survey presented as an information item in today's agenda. These results from Metro North reflect a rebound in customer satisfaction from last year's results. It also highlights that there's additional work to be done. There were significant increases in satisfaction among most of the major categories compared to 2014. Satisfaction with Metro North overall jumped 10 points to 83%. On-time performance, a key driver of customer satisfaction, improved by 16 points in 2015 to 74% satisfied, reflective of an improvement in service reliability. The customer satisfaction with the railroad along the New Haven line rose 17 points to 76%, but it still trails behind the Hudson and Harlem line at 89%. Reverse peak customer satisfaction was up 8 points. West of Hudson was down 5 points to 84%. Metro North's 2015 survey was conducted in June and July as we continued to rebound from a challenging period which had adversely impacted customer perceptions of performance. At the time of the survey, Metro North had developed a series of action plans designed to rebuild its infrastructure and provide a safe and reliable service for our customers. And as we continue on that path, we expect that the satisfaction will continue to improve. Next, I want to report on the New Haven and Hudson schedule changes effective today. As part of the spring schedule change, that temporary transfer station at Devon that I showed you the pictures of that was built by our own forces, it will no longer be necessary as the trains from Waterbury will continue right on to the New Haven main line for a transfer. The Devon transfer was a concept that was developed internally by Mel Corbett, who retired from Metro North earlier this year, and I thank the many individuals and departments for their support in making this project a success. This includes our Communication and Signals Department, Track and Structures, Power, Operations, Transportation, Customer Service, MTA Police, and Connecticut DOT. It was the first phase of a $5.8 million priority repair project on the Devon Movable Bridge undertaken by the Connecticut Department of Transportation and Metro North. Our forces constructed that walkway connecting a 2 4-car train length passenger platforms to accommodate the train-to-train transfers. In my time here, it was one of those feats that you take great pride in seeing, that the people could not only design this, build it, and though we dealt with some of the facts of it was lit up so well at night that it competed with the Luxor in Las Vegas. I think that's a little bit of a stretch, but there is an awful lot of pride at the organization for having accomplished this. On the Hudson line, a major switch replacement was done at a key location in the Bronx near Yankee Stadium. It was completed this past weekend, and when the work started the first week in October, a single-track operation required in a 6-mile section from Harlem 125th Street Station to Marble Hill, and resulted in some customers having to change trains at Marble Hill and Croton Harmon. Regular weekend train service will now resume, and a new Hudson line schedule is in effect today and has been issued. I want to note that the weekend busing is taking place on the Port Jervis line this month in both directions between Port Jervis and Harriman to accommodate infrastructure improvements. Substitute buses are following the train schedule, while the bridge deck and switch work takes place at Salisbury Mills and Campbell Hall. In addition, weekday off-peak busing for select trains is underway while we perform track work between Port Jervis and Otisville Station. The last item in my report is the second girder launch. The first girder launch was very successful for the new New York Bridge, is planned for this coming Friday night, November 20th, into Saturday morning, the 21st. Metro North again will reduce overnight Hudson train service as workers building the new bridge install a 700-ton girder assemblies over our tracks at Tarrytown. Metro North has coordinated with the new New York Bridge team to minimize the impact on Hudson Line train service while the work is underway by the contractor. The coordination will ensure that no passenger trains are beneath the work site while the girder assemblies are moving overhead. This means fewer trains than normal will operate during 3 13-hour construction periods, and we will adjust our schedule slightly this Friday to accommodate that work. There is one additional girder move planned for December, and we greatly appreciate that the new New York Bridge team is working with Metro North and has scheduled their work to minimize service impacts to our customers. Any questions?
Any questions for Joe? If not, do you have a safety report on page 28? Joseph?
Yes, good morning. The safety report is noted in your book on pages 29, 30, and 31. I'd like to just highlight a couple of items there. The FRA reportable injury frequency indexes for both lost time and restricted duty are declining. September of 2015 was our best month for employee injuries since December of 2014. As noted, when you look at the customer injury matrix that's on page 29, you'll see that our slip, trips, and falls are significantly up for customer injuries. By the end of this month, we will distribute on each and every seat our long-standing Put Your Best Foot Forward campaign, which will take place very soon. And as Lori mentioned, the headquarters in Long Island and Amtrak and New Jersey Transit have prepared this item that you see before you. Metro North is going to kind of borrow that to extend it to our customers also. On November 21st, Metro North will conduct its emergency preparedness exercise in Brewster, New York. Several local, county, and emergency service agencies will participate. We are looking forward to conducting that exercise. With that, just on your safety enhancement memo, I'd like to again, the C3RS program, we are on target to have all of the additional unions sign the agreement, the IMOU, by the end of the year, and we will be looking to kick off a major portion of that C3RS for the other 10 unions right after January. It involves some training and some other aspects that we have to take care of, but the FRA, NASA, Metro North, and all the unions have agreed to the information on the IMOU, and we're going to move forward, and we're looking very much to do that. Any questions? I'd be more than happy to answer.
Any questions on the safety report? If not, thank you. Capital construction?
Bill Goodrich is going to present the progress on East Side
Okay.
Access this week.
Bill? Thank you.
Good morning. I'm just going to cover a few very brief items on progress in the Manhattan construction, some of the tours that we've had since our last meeting, and some of the upcoming public events. The Manhattan South structures is progressing well. There's only one wall section remaining in the west cavern at this point, so that's on schedule to complete as planned. The other Manhattan North structures contract is progressing well on the north back of house, which is also in the cavern, and both of these are key contracts and key activities as far as prerequisites to complete work to pave the way for CMO 07, our terminal contract, to be awarded. As you know, that's currently in procurement. We're actually proceeding into the negotiations phase now, so I wanted to pass that on as far as progress. We plan on being here in January, the January board, with a recommendation for award. As far as the concourse and facilities fit-out contract, we did have a floor-breaking ceremony in Grand Central Terminal on November 10th. That was attended by both railroad presidents as well as Michael Rodniciano. The ceremony marked the emergence of the East Side Access project into the terminal, giving commuters and visitors a first glance of construction, most of which has taken place over the last several years unnoticed, 150 feet below street level. It was well attended by local broadcast, print, and internet news outlets covering the event. Also, on November 4th, we had two press tours of the cavern and tunnels. We had nearly 100 journalists and staff that were part of that tour from the U.S. and foreign countries. Michael Rodniciano led both those tours for local and national press in the morning and the foreign press in the afternoon. We do have a tour that's scheduled for the elected officials representing the area around the Herald Interlocking, scheduled on November 20th. And that'll be conducted in partnership with the Long Island Railroad on one of its trains. And finally, the members of the board, the committee here, are going to be participating, some of you, in a tour that's scheduled for November 23rd of this month. That's of the Grand Central Terminal Cavern and tunnels. That concludes my report.
Thank you.
And let me just add, if any board members have not signed up for that tour and want to, just contact Michael's office to do that.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions for capital construction? If not, Chief, police report.
Good morning. For October, throughout the whole system, we were down 19%. Year-to-date, system-wide, we're down 15% in crime. And just to note, robberies are down 42% year-to-date. We're continuing not only our educational campaign with the grade crossings, but our enforcement as well. We've issued 1,680 summonses year-to-date, 455 of those for grade crossing infractions. The rest were for other infractions noted. In addition, we've handed out over 5,000 educational pamphlets at those grade crossings for the individuals who actually stop and do what they're supposed to do. Obviously, we're monitoring events overseas. We have increased our deployment. We will continue to do so. We're coordinating with our law enforcement partners, the New York State Police, NYPD, Amtrak, and National Guard, to name a few. We do have individuals assigned to the Joint Terrorism Task Force and the NYPD intelligence units who will keep us informed, and we're in daily contact with the Homeland Security as well. And we'll continue those steps going forward.
Any questions?
Any questions?
Chief? Thank you, Chief, very much. Let's move on to information items. The M9 procurement.
Again, the M9 procurement will be given at CPOC.
Okay.
It is in the books, and if time permits, we can give it at the end of the meeting.
Well, I just want to, if there's any board member who is not going to be at CPOC that has any questions on it, I'm more than happy to take those questions now, because I don't want to presume that everybody is there. So if anybody has a question on that, if not, we'll get the full presentation at CPOC this afternoon. Okay. Long Island Railroad items.
Yeah, the first is the committee charter.
Right, review of the committee charter. I do not believe there are any changes to the committee charter. We look at it obviously each year in relation to activities of the committee, but I did not see any changes or recommendations, so we will keep it as it is. And we will move on. Customer satisfaction.
Joe mentioned it in his remarks. The Long Island Railroad Customer Satisfaction Survey is in the book as well. Our numbers are down a little bit this year. We continue to remain high in terms of our crews and ticket agents and those types of folks who have direct interaction with the customers. And our low point continues to be bathrooms on board the trains and in our stations, and is a continuing challenge for us. And we recognize it, and we recognize we got to do better. We also have an information item for East Side Access Readiness Project, and that's a presentation. Rich, you prepared? You ready?
Before we get to that, does anybody have any questions on the customer satisfaction survey before we just move on? If not, okay.
Yeah, and before Rich starts, I just want him to get ready. I'll go to the final item, which is the 2015 holiday schedule. And want to mention that the changes to the schedule are in your book, and they do represent, obviously, prior to Thanksgiving, increased service for Thanksgiving Day Parade, increased service for early departures on Thanksgiving Eve, on Christmas Eve, for New Year's Eve, for New Year's Day. All those schedule changes, information are in the booklet and represent the changes we make traditionally every year for the different events.
I find it interesting on the commuter satisfaction survey on the home boarding station that the item with the lowest number is parking availability. I find that to be very interesting, both from a context of how many people are using the railroad and the railroad's ability to work with our local municipalities to provide more parking at the stations. It is an item that is becoming more and more important as the railroad carries more and more people. It's as simple as that.
Parking continues to be an issue in many of our stations. There's
Yep.
not enough land. In most of our stations, we don't control the parking lots,
That's right.
which is a tremendous challenge.
Yep.
We have built 2 parking garages, or actually a third one just opened. So it is something that we may have to do more and more of, but many communities are reluctant to go that route.
Yeah, but it is an interesting context. Yes, sir. Jonathan.
Thank you. Pat, any overall comment or any comment on the overall trend of the survey? It didn't plunge, except I have one question about one category that kind of looked like it did.
I
but
mean,
it's not that favorable.
Yeah, in terms of the trend, obviously, anytime you go down, you don't feel good about that. It's not something you want to have. So that certainly catches our attention. The surveys, having done them for a lot of years, there's a number of different factors that affect them. Certainly, a fare increase is always a difficult challenge when you have a year of a fare increase. That tends to impact it. But I'll be honest with you, one of the things that I think that's impacting us the most, and part of the success we've had with ever-increasing ridership, gets to be more and more the capacity of our trains to be able to handle that growth. And I think that is part of the story as well. So we need to continue to monitor that growth and try and focus on what changes we can possibly make to accommodate the growth. But I think that's part of the story there.
But in the overall satisfaction by branch, the Far Rockaway, Montauk, Oyster Bay, and Long Beach branches did show a relatively significant drop. Are there any efforts underway to figure out the details why, A, and then B, what to do about them?
Yeah. Are there efforts? Sure. It's very difficult to try and get an answer to what affects that, and a lot of times it's service levels, as I said, there's limited ability, particularly at the peak hours, for the Long Island Railroad to be able to add service. Our capacity is limited by the East River Tunnel. So at the peak, there's very little we can do. Maybe we can increase the length of a train if it's less than the 12-car limit that we have, but adding additional trains at the peak is not an option right now.
All right, then, just the one thing I said, the onboard conditions, there's something that's woefully low. The cleanliness of the restrooms and the physical condition of the restrooms are at numbers that are, obviously unacceptable. And I wanted to know give you a chance to respond to that and explain what we're doing to improve those conditions.
Well, that one gets very difficult because, as you know, most of our trains make back and forth type trips. So as they get used, it gets more and more of a challenge. There are, in some instances, things we can do, particularly if something gets reported to us as being unacceptable. But that's the biggest challenge with the bathrooms is that we do make repeated trips up and down the line, and they don't go through a cleaning between trips. So that's certainly.
Is there any way, but the numbers are down in the significant, I mean, this is just a survey, but it's reflective of the conditions.
Sure it is.
They've, again, I don't like to use the word plunge, particularly for these restrooms, but they've plummeted the numbers. And is there a way to have a super inspection of the trains that are having these problems and have a special cleaning on a train-by-train basis to address the trains that have the worst situations?
I don't know that we can identify it by trains that are worse than others. Let me think about that one a little bit.
I always have a theory about those numbers. If you ask the first person who uses the bathroom in the day or the second person who uses the bathroom in the day, I have no doubt you will get significantly different perceptions. Or the third person, or the fourth person, or the fifth person. So while the ability to clean the bathrooms during the day while the train is ongoing is, of course, impossible, and we rely on the customers to keep the bathrooms clean, I guess, and the issue is how often can we clean the bathrooms on the trains during the day when they are waiting to be used for the next ride. That's the only way in which the railroad or any railroad of anybody with bathrooms that move can accommodate that. So while the condition of them are difficult, if not, and all of us who have used them have found that, the issue is, you know, the difference in perception based on when you use it. And that's the hardest thing. That's the hardest thing. But that doesn't mean the railroad can't do a better job or may not be able to do a better job in the cleaning of it while it's, you know, stationed somewhere.
But if we're going to have these surveys, and I hear what you're saying, it's not a scientific examination of the facilities, but if we're going to have them and the numbers stick out as woefully as these do, we have to do something to address the situation, or let's just stop the survey, which maybe we should discuss.
Or stop having the bathrooms, which
that
might be a better option.
I don't think so. Maybe we ask board members and senior management to use those bathrooms and to determine whether they're actually so unpleasant.
For those of us who ride the train from Ronkonkoma, we use the bathrooms. And, you know, sometimes, I think we all agree, they are in better shape than other times. Sometimes it depends on who I followed in that regard. But, you know, it's an ongoing issue.
Pat, you get the gist of it. I don't want to curtail discussion. I don't want to flush it, but it is something. If we're going to take the surveys, take the trouble, we have to do something more than look at it on a sheet of paper and say, "Gee, that's a low number."
I agree with you wholeheartedly. I don't mistake what I was saying to be an excuse. I'm just trying to explain the challenge that we have of trying to accomplish that. So,
thank you.
Anyone else on the
report
survey?
back? How do we?
Yes,
Mr.
we
Chairman,
will
what would
ask,
you recommend?
Pat will, if you could come back to us in a couple months he will do so, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes. Neil?
I generally talk about safety as a primary focus of my comments, but today I just want to mention from the survey, both for Metro North and Long Island Railroad, I thought the notion of value was very interesting. I typically think of my role as being focused on safety, service, and value or price. And I actually thought it was interesting. Long Island Railroad showed completely the same, virtually the same numbers in value 3 years in a row, which includes a material, not exorbitant, but a material raise in price, and Metro North came back up despite a change in price. So I think we have to applaud the work we do in the comparison of what we offer versus the alternatives to commuting into New York City. I would suggest that we keep our eye on that value topic because there is some magic number out there. I don't know what it is. There's a magic number out there depending on where you commute from. I commute from Putnam County, and my monthly fee is over $400 now. So there's a magic number out there where that value equation starts to change a little bit. But for now, I think we should be very proud of the fact that the offer we give is substantially better than alternatives.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, regarding the service constrictions you mentioned, Pat, I mean, service constrictions on the Long Island Railroad seem apparent to anybody, to me, that looks at the map, and it seems apparent to me as you struggle with this over the years. I've followed it over the years, and I certainly recognize there are service constrictions. Do you have a metric for, or is it you're, as a mass transit professional, you're just looking at the same stuff I'm looking at and saying you can't add capacity here, you can't move people, you know, and when you look at the customer surveys, and they're, I wouldn't say demanding, you know, demanding you get around service constrictions that you simply can't get around. Do you have a way to measure that, what the service constrictions are and what the limits are on your ability to add capacity?
Well, in terms of number of trains through the tunnel tubes, yeah, we can tell you exactly how many trains we can run an hour through there, and it is what it is. You know, the thing to keep in mind is East Side Access is coming, and that will remove or greatly improve upon the capacity under the East River. I mean, of the 4 tunnel tubes that run into Penn Station right now, the Long Island Railroad uses about 2 of them full-time, and we use about 30% of the other. So New Jersey Transit and Amtrak share 1.7 of the 4 tunnel tubes, where we have 2.3, if you want to look at it that way in terms of capacity. When we go to Grand Central, we get 2 more tunnel tubes into Manhattan. So when you look at 2.3 versus 4.3, it's a huge capacity increase for Long Island Railroad. So for the first time in 100 years, our whole service dynamic is going to change dramatically. And we've undertaken a study, obviously, before East Side Access was done. We've just undertaken another study to sort of define as best we can commuting patterns that people will avail themselves to when they have more choices than they have today in terms of destination. So that will be a huge challenge for Long Island Railroad. You know, for the most part, we tweak a train a couple minutes now. We can't run anymore. When East Side Access coming, it's a whole new game. It's a completely different story. And, you know, while I don't want to say we're waiting for 7 years, but the reality of it is we are, because right now there's so much construction going on in the vicinity of Harold Interlocking. My ability to try and stretch anything down there it's unrealistic because there's so much work going on. I can't push that button right now.
Well, which leads me to, you know, East Side Access is the obvious 800-pound gorilla here, but 7 years should give you plenty of time to study what I've asked you in the past. I don't know, I've asked previous presidents for as well, is comparisons of what East Side Access looks like in terms of service with mainline third track and without mainline third track. And that aren't you, in effect, trading one service capacity limitor for another?
Yeah, I mean, obviously,
if you don't get mainline third track at some point.
When 100 years ago, when the East River tunnels were built, that sort of defined the rest of the system. So you didn't need a whole bunch more capacity because you weren't going to be able to pump trains underneath the East River. So the rest of the system certainly has capacity constraints, and whether it be the famous Jamaica Crawl or the third track area, there are limitations throughout the system, and Rich is, you're giving him a good cue. He's going to talk a little bit about some of the East Side Access readiness projects that we're undertaking. That said, the third track is obviously the 600-pound gorilla, and it is a huge capital project in and of itself that has met with a lot of opposition. So it is a project that ultimately I think will need to be done, but there is not a project to do anything right now. There is nothing happening on a third track. A study was started back in 2010 or 11, I believe, and that study was abandoned because of opposition to the project. So it was never completed.
Rich?
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, there is an information item in your book. I'm Rich Oakley. I'm the Chief Program Officer for the Long Island Railroad. Pat mentioned earlier that there was a significant signal cutover that was made over the weekend. That is just one of the things that's taking place on the Long Island Railroad with respect to supporting East Side Access. Be aware that there are several ongoing infrastructure investments being made in support of East Side Access throughout Long Island Railroad system, located on the Ronkonkoma, Babylon, Port Washington branches, as well as in Jamaica. The 5 major East Side Access support projects have a total budget of $455.2 million and are in various phases of work. The first 3 listed here are actually in construction. Mid-Suffolk Yard will be advertised as a design-build project the first quarter of next year. Port Washington Yard extension is in the planning stage, with the Long Island Railroad pursuing a consensus with the town of North Hempstead on how best to extend the yard tracks while minimizing impacts to existing parking. All 5 projects are scheduled to be completed prior to East Side Access opening day. Jamaica capacity improvements, Phase 1 will provide the added capacity needed for Jamaica Station and its surrounding infrastructure to service Grand Central Terminal. The new infrastructure in Jamaica will include realignment of Johnson Avenue train yard and to make room for the additional station track at Jamaica. Construction of a new platform and associated infrastructure, as well as universal switches, which will provide an increased ability to make parallel moves in and out of Jamaica. To advance the initial construction work at Jamaica, the reconfiguration of Johnson Avenue Yard is being performed under a design-build contract. On August 23rd, the south half of the lead track, the south half of the yard and the lead track at Johnson Avenue Yard were reconstructed, allowing us to progress the next major elements of construction, which is to build the new platform. Massapequa pocket track and switches, as well as local signal bridge, were installed this year. This work was piggybacked with the reconstruction of Massapequa Station platform to maximize the use of the service plan in place. Design and procurement of the signal equipment has been completed, with the first delivery of equipment expected the middle of next year, with all work completed before the end of 2017. Using a design-build contract again, construction of the new Colonial Road Bridge was completed during the weekends of August 22nd and September 26th, including the retaining walls needed to clear the way for the start of the Great Neck Pocket Track extension, which will start the spring of next year. This work is advancing concurrently with the final design of the signal system, which will be on site in 2017 for the final installations and tie-ins by the end of 2018. With the local elections behind us now, we will be resuming discussions with the town of North Hempstead as to the best design approach to extending the yard in a manner, again, that will minimize impact to our customers and the customer parking that's available. We do not see any issues with getting this work done long before East Side Access opening day. Mid-Suffolk Yard on the main line. Design of a fully functional electric yard in Ronkonkoma off the main line branch is underway to provide an increased East End train storage capacity for East Side Access service. The facility, as well as the facilities to service our rolling stock equipment. Draft environmental assessment issued to the public for comment on June 30th through September 4th, and subsequently finalized with no significant adverse environmental impacts identified. Completion of the preliminary design is expected in January of next year. Award of the design-build contract for the yard construction is scheduled for November 2016, with completion by the fourth quarter of 2019. And as you can see, all of these projects will be done long before East Side Access opening day. Any questions?
Questions for Rich on this presentation? If not, thank you very much. I assume you will continue to keep us updated on the status of these projects in the next couple of months and others as we go forward.
Yes, we typically make this presentation at CPOC, but we're happy to bring it to you today.
Yeah, I think it's always important to bring it here to the committee also. Thank you. Pat, I guess that finishes your information items. Joe?
Under information items, to the chair, we did the review of the committee charter.
Yep. I don't think there's any changes to the charter.
No changes to the
Okay.
charter. I've already spoken about the customer satisfaction survey and what's gone on there. And I reiterate what Pat has said in terms of the holiday schedule and shopper special. We have developed special timetables to address the travel demands, and a number of shopper specials will operate to attract customers during the holiday period.
Any questions on any of those items? If not, we'll go to procurements. Long Island Railroad is first.
Good morning. There are three procurements in this month's procurement package totaling $15.6 million. There are no non-competitive procurements. There are three competitive procurements in the amount of $15.6 million, and there are no ratifications. The first item is a request for MTA Board approval to award a competitively negotiated contract to Ansaldo STS USA in the amount of $9,095,500 to replace the existing signal system along the entire Long Beach branch, beginning at the Long Beach terminal to its interconnection with the Babylon branch and Valley Tower. The next item is a request for MTA Board approval to award a competitively negotiated contract to Myers Controlled Power LLC for the lump sum price of $6,519,293 to furnish a prefabricated traction power substation needed to replace one existing substation located at Long Beach. And the last item is a request for MTA Board approval to award a competitively bid 3-year miscellaneous service contract to Aramark Uniform Services in the not-to-exceed amount of $79,290 for the furnishing and weekly cleaning of walk-off mats at various Long Island Railroad locations in support of station operations departments. These items are submitted for your consideration and vote.
Any questions on any of these three items? If not, motion to approve. John, second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. Metro North?
Metro North has 6 procurement actions in the total amount of $1.79 million. There are 2 non-competitive procurements totaling $1.2 million. There are 4 competitive procurements totaling $590,000, and there are no ratifications.
Any questions on any of the Metro North items? If not, motion to approve. Second. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Capital Construction.
Good morning. Capital Construction's procurement package this month consists of one item totaling $4,282,776. The items located on page 174 of the committee book. The items for ratification of a modification to the East Side Access Manhattan North Structures contract for the increase of the allowance under bid item number 5 for the remediation of the existing structures work. This item is hereby submitted for your consideration and vote.
Any questions on the capital construction item? If not, motion to approve. So move second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. That completes the procurements. We are now on agency reports, since we have some time. Does anyone want to highlight any of the agency reports that start on page 175 and go through page 263 on either railroad, or are there any questions from any of the board members? Jonathan, go right ahead.
Thanks. I have a question. Due to the electronic way I'm trying to do things, I can't find the exact page. I'm
okay.
sorry. It has to do with fare box percentages collection and the differences between the two commuter lines. It's scattered throughout, but I had it on a specific page. I believe Metro North is about 10 percentage points higher than Long Island Railroads, and I just wanted a short but general discussion. I know we do this periodically, but November is usually a good time for it, of perhaps the meaning, context, and explanation of that. Yeah, it's somewhere in the 190s to 230s
Right.
including.
Metro North is on page 210. Right.
Okay.
I can give an initial shot, and maybe Mark, this is Mark Young, Long Island Railroad, Kim Porcelain, you can, I'm sure, chime in too. I mean, there are a few things just to remember. I don't have that, just in the interest of answering your question, I didn't scroll to the page. But each of us show in our respective reports, there's a table that shows some of those core measures, including the fare box operating ratio. A few years ago, we used to just have a straight math formula that would come up with a number, and actually the disparity between the two railroads was greater than it is now, because we added at that point, with the direction of the MTA budget department, what's called an adjusted fare box ratio, which you also see on that page. What that was meant to do was to equalize the two railroads for particularly one of the major drivers of the lower number for the Long Island Railroad, which is the unfunded Long Island Railroad pension liability that I know Bob Foran has briefed members on several times before. So we both worked together at the railroad to develop an adjusted number that was attempted to equalize for that. I believe you may be, even after you adjust, the Long Island Railroad is a certain percentage points lower than Metro North, and that's the result of many factors, which includes work rules, the nature of the infrastructure, and what it takes to run service in our territories. Of course, we can go into greater detail if you'd like any time. I'd be happy to do that. But we found those to be some of the bigger drivers. I don't know if Kim, you wanted to add anything.
I do agree with Mark. The FOR calculation has been adjusted to be normalized and comparable between the two commuter railroads. And, we are 66% year-to-date for 2015. And I think what's been helpful from our end here is we've had some positive variances with our overtime spending. As you see, the revenue ridership growth on both commuter rails have been consistent and positive in 2015 compared to last year. So it's our ability to control some of the discretionary spending is where we have the leverage and ability to improve these factors. Also, I would say that for the month of September, the fare operating ratio is 70.9, and that high is due to the fact that that period is subsequent to the RWA retroactive wage adjustment payments that we've incurred in the last couple of years. So we've now come back to a normalized factor of 66%, pending and subsequent to the labor negotiations, which do have factored in higher costs than what we've seen in the past couple of years for labor.
I think that's a good starting point. The follow-up questions I have will probably be more appropriately addressed to Bob or Tom, and perhaps at another time. But that's a good start.
I also know that there is also additional information in the finance book each month on these items.
Yeah.
So if there's something else you need, either one, somebody will get it for you. Okay.
Just one mention
Oh, go ahead.
is in the finance book, the FOR factors are the unadjusted factors across the agencies. So those are the normal revenue and expenditures, which what I mean is revenues is only fare box ridership and commissary. These adjusted number for the commuter railroads also reflect other revenues for advertising and our retail revenues. On the expense side, as Mark mentioned, it excludes the unfunded pension obligations. And so on the finance book, across the agencies, they are consistent, but they are different. And so only the two commuter railroad FORs have been adjusted for comparability purposes.
What was that word?
For comparability
Comparability.
purposes.
Comparing to each other?
Yes.
Right.
Right.
Right. So the broader comparison needs to be done probably in a longer conversation that would include some adjustments and the like.
And that's why I wanted to mention that broader conversation and that adjustment agency-wide is not yet taken place.
Thank you.
Norman?
Yeah, regarding comparability, am I accurate in saying that both of these railroads are the highest fare box recovery ratios in the nation of any commuter rail properties?
I don't know that we've looked at that. We do know from some of our benchmarking reviews with there's an international benchmarking review group we're members of, and we do have higher ratios than many of the members.
So what, the point is, what may be low is actually high, depending upon the comparative nature of the places you're comparing it to. Right.
Well, let me boldly state that it's the highest fare box recovery ratio in America. If someone can refute it, then I'll be glad to adjust my considered opinion.
Yes. Anyone? Yes. Ira?
I have a comment about on-time performance and pension survey, but on that, I mean, if you cram people in and there's standing room only and you have crowded platforms at Penn Station, one would lead to believe that we're probably operating pretty efficiently in that way. Because, I mean, that's what makes the subway so efficient too, is you cram a lot of people into a subway car and they're all paying fares and you're going to have a high ratio, regardless of some of the other factors which may marginally change it. But what I was going to talk about, what I wanted to add, well, I don't know if it's really a question, but the passenger survey, I looked at for the Long Island Railroad, I looked at the list of satisfaction, the lowest being Port Jefferson. So it happens that over the past year, the Port Jefferson branch has had a pretty abysmal on-time performance. I mean, it doesn't correlate cleanly, but I think on-time performance is something that especially commuter railroad riders really look for. And we've had challenges on the Long Island Railroad this past year, which would mean that they'd be relatively, and over the past few years, actually. And I know Dave Kubicek is working hard to change that so we can meet goal. One of the things I wonder about in looking over the months is it seems that we have, on Long Island Railroad, a certain number, I want to say, maybe not high, of signal or switch problems that every month seem to cause a certain amount of delays on I guess it's like 12% on the categories of delay for what, in the categories of delay for the past year. But I just wonder, is there maybe at some point we can see what can be done about that. Is there something we should be doing? Is there some capital projects that we're going to spend in the next plan that would reduce some of these delays?
A couple of things. I mean, one of the things that Dave and I have had many discussions about is if you look at the Long Island Railroad delays, a very large percentage of them are due to single incidents. And what I mean by that is last week we had an Amtrak train broke down in one of the East River tunnel tubes. And over the weekend we had an Amtrak train break down in Harold Interlocking when we were doing this cutover that we were talking about. And when you run at the capacity that we run it, there is no room for recovery. If something that happens at 10:07 in the morning, I don't recover until 10 o'clock in the morning when the rush hour is over. you just can't get it back. I mean, everything is scheduled right behind one another, and once the leader falls behind, until you alleviate the percentage of traffic that comes in, you just take a beating. So a signal failure or a mechanical failure or whatever the failure is, the location of that failure and the time of that failure will impact on-time performance to an unbelievable degree, depending where it is. A signal failure out in Patchogue is completely different than one at Harold. And it's the nature of the beast. That's what really drives the Long Island numbers, is because during the peak area, we do run at virtually 100% of the capacity that's out there, and there just is no room for recovery when something happens at the wrong place at the wrong time.
But having said that, what are we doing to ensure the reliability of the signal system, of whatever systems there are, in these, what you call choke points? I mean, and I know we have a partner there in Amtrak, and sometimes we're not that happy with what goes on there, but I mean, having a seeing what can be done with them, and also seeing in our own system. So
several different things. We do need to eliminate some of these choke points, and as I said, the East Side Access Project does that, the Jamaica Capacity Project does that, the double track sort of does that, the third track, if it ever happens, would be part of that, but we do need to continually work. You mentioned the port, Jeff. As you know, we have a problem up there where we don't have a yard, and we are actively working with the elected officials for Suffolk County to try and identify a location for a yard. With the capacity that you have, there's only so much you can do. One of the things you've heard me mention here is the Long Island Railroad Control Center is a location where we're not able to see the whole railroad. We still have towers spread throughout the railroad. That hinders your ability to communicate. It hinders your ability to make the best possible decisions. And we need to keep working on things like that give us that incremental improvement. But some of it's just the old-fashioned stuff. You need to go after the individual trains that historically have a low time performance and try to find what you can do to improve them. But I mean, there's no one answer to your question. There's a lot of different things we need to work on. So, Dave?
If I could also add, a couple of things that we're doing is like meeting with Amtrak on a regular basis now, looking at repeater locations like switches. Because one thing is, one switch, it impacts all of us. Prior, it wasn't really a lot of discussion, other than it just had a failure. Now we've been pressing the issue a little bit more. Was a mechanical failure? Was an electrical failure? Also on the rolling stock side, say for instance, we'll have equipment issues and such, and instead of maybe just looking at the last 2 or 3 weeks or that month, I've pushed it back towards, we're looking at stuff maybe a year back. And we're trying from a rolling stock perspective to trend to see, do we have some piece of equipment that is failing? To Pat's point, there is no room. I mean, it is just a pure capacity. So with that, we're really having to get a little bit more specific to say, how is the switch actually operating? Also, whenever the construction work and stuff is taking place, whenever they're taking certain switches out, what type of ripple effect does that have on the other 3 railroads that are running through there? And it continues to compress. Then as we make a little bit of leeway with the construction where we get more reliability and stuff related into it, it'll help us out. But there's a lot of mechanical type activities that are looked at behind the scenes, and that discussion is on a pretty much a monthly basis now.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Anyone else with any questions or comments? Go ahead.
Just about the M9, I may not be here for Capital, I realize. There was a question that came up last month regarding the new fleet and adding seats to it, and there's been discussion about having, it's that instead of having units of 2, you could have units of 4. That way there'd be less cabs. You'd lighten the, theoretically, you'd lighten the cars, and you'd probably be able to have more seats. And I was just curious as to what the answer is, why we are going with married pairs as opposed to units of 3 or 4.
Well,
Go ahead.
we can do that presentation. I think we're scheduled till 10 o'clock if you want to.
Or at least do.
We can go through that, but, or I can just answer the question about married pairs.
Answer the question. I saw the
just answer the
presentation.
question.
In terms of married pairs, for the M9 procurement, that contract was awarded some time ago. I can't change that contract at this point in time, not without paying a lot of money and having a lot of delays to the delivery, and I don't want to go there. Dave is somebody who changed the WMATA consist from married pairs to quads. So he is somebody that is very familiar with the challenges of doing that. You know, there are several. It's your train makeup when a car comes out of service. 4 cars come out of service, not 2. So there are spare ratio issues and that type of stuff. But probably the biggest one is all your existing shops and lifts and stuff like that you have in the shops are designed for the married pairs. And if you need to enlarge those lifts, then they'll be able to lift up a quad. What's involved with the investment required to be able to do that? Do you even have space to do it? There are all the challenges that we would need to analyze to sort of make that change and come up with a recommendation.
And I also would add, to that point, this is a kind of like an east-west operation. We don't really have loop tracks in yards. All of the infrastructure is basically west. We really don't have anything out east to really work on the stuff, and even to the point we're talking about a restroom, the ability to be able to turn a piece of equipment around, and it's not physically set up to manufacture or process a bathroom is a big logistic concern here, as well. So to that point, it's shops, it's amenities, it's power connections across the board. Also, whenever we look at the fleets with the M9As, we're really looking at it very aggressively. Do you disrupt an overall operation at this point in time for such a small segment that could be very, very tight? And then the other thing that we're also going through is we're looking at a fleet utilization of, by the time you have maintenance and overhauls and everything else, what are you really using the fleet, for? And where would you run that piece of equipment and stuff, on the alignments and stuff with that? So those are things that, that we're working on, but our ability not to have anything out east for shop, and especially not a yard to be able to turn stuff and to work stuff around when you start getting into that specialized equipment, you have to be able to have that maneuverability, and that's an Achilles heel right now as we see stuff.
Any other questions? If not, thank you all. Motion to adjourn. So move second. Thank you.